Yo, what's going on? Actually, that worked.
Yeah, whatever you did.
I guess you got to be right up on the mic. Ah, sweet.
Hello? 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 I think you have to adjust another one. I can hear you. Hello, hello, hello. Test. Holy crap, dude. Hello?
Yeah, I got you now. I just had to turn the volume up.
Wow.
Oh, that's slick.
Sounds good, too.
It does. It's like a legit podcast. Holy shit.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, so now we're set. So
Are we
what the hell-
recording?
Yeah, it's recording.
Holy
I mean,
shit,
it's got a 128 gig card, so we could probably talk for freaking an hour and then chop it down or whatever.
Yeah.
Or we just flow with the flow. Go with the flow.
I'm actually very surprised on how good it sounds. It sounds like we're like in a it sounds like you have padding everywhere, like studio, like an ambiance here. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, but I'm guessing these are directional mics, so you probably have to go right on it, and we can't look away and stuff.
Right.
So let's just I guess wrap, and then we can dice it up, right?
Yeah. Or we could keep going.
Yeah, I guess we could do that too. So, did we ever come up with a name? What were your name ideas?
Probably just do exclusive minds. That was the first one, obviously, that me and you talked about. And then I like the name. I told you about it. I forget now. The Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
That was another good one. I don't know. What about you? Have you had any good ones?
Well, I mean, the only two that I had were exclusive minds, and I guess the generational gap, since there's obviously a big age difference between us, and we could always pull in like Noah or somebody to even get a younger
dude.
vibe.
And when we first talked about it, it was such a good concept that I feel like now that we're talking, it makes so much more sense because there is such a huge dynamic. Because you think about it, like most people that have this difference is either like a student and a teacher or a parent and a kid. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily like two people who are like-minded, think the same, and you can actually have a conversation, which is very, very cool. But so do you want to give an introduction about yourself? Like tell the people, I guess, just like a quick excerpt about yourself, and then we could just go from there.
Yeah. So, introducing myself. So,
Yeah. Where are you from? What did you do, Joe? Let's get down to the nitty gritty here.
So I am basically a 55-year-old white dude, right? Am I allowed to say that these days?
You're allowed to say that. You won't get canceled.
Or a Caucasian? I'm sorry.
No, white dude's good.
I don't. You don't even know. That's like a thing. It's like a whole freaking thing. Like being careful what you say. It's just nuts.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so yeah, I'm the older dude. So I am the old guy. I have pretty much spent my entire working career in the technology industry, selling everything from computers. Actually worked at Apple for a few years.
What'd you do there?
Started out in sales and then did what they call channel or partner management, channel development. And that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 20-something years, which is basically working with the people who resell the product. So in the case of Apple, right, they have resellers and dealers. It's, now when you think resellers, you're probably thinking B&H or Best Buy. But back then there were little stores, mom and pop shops locally that would sell Apple product, and so I would go around and work with them to, inventory,
and
trainings, you name it.
And you would be with Apple selling to them?
Selling to the partners that would resell the product to like somebody like you or whoever.
This is really good because I always asked you what did you do? You always said selling, but now we're getting into it, which is really cool. So what would you say the toughest part of doing that, or what was a learning experience from that whole system of working with Apple from the earliest stages? You imagine what you said 20 years ago you were working with Apple. What was that like? What was their culture back then? Because now it's completely different.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I worked at Apple in the late 90s, so 97 to basically 2000. So if you think about the time frame historically, that is, I started working there literally 2 months after Steve Jobs came back. I think he came back in the middle of 97, and I started in September of 97, somewhere around there. And so the culture was changing drastically right then and there. The company was pretty much on the brink of bankruptcy. I mean, this is all history. I think everybody knows, right? So
I didn't know that.
yeah, I mean, I actually went because I was kind of an Apple fanboy and zealot, and still am to this day, right? But
Yeah, you got this
so for me,
ginormous-
it was like a dream job, and no one, I think, at that period of time actually wanted to go work for Apple because they were on the verge of bankruptcy. That was when Dell and Gateway and all the PC vendors were just basically ruling the world. So it was kind of interesting. So, I mean, I started doing sales, right? So I was actually selling to end users. Like I would go down to DuPont, the experimental station, and basically sell them computers. That's, an example of one customer. But then there were some reorgs, and about the middle of that tenure, I actually went into this channels, which was something I had never done before. So that was kind of weird because it was actually, I wasn't actually talking to the end users directly, the people who were buying the computers. It was kind of an intermediate step. So it was just a little bit of a learning experience. And it just, at the end of the day, sales is sales, and you're just selling to a different person.
Yeah. Now, to paint the picture for everyone, this guy, Joe, he very much Apple throughout. He has a Apple computer here that almost looks like an air purifier.
That's because it is an air purifier.
This is an air purifier? Wait, where's the computer at?
There's a laptop on the other end of the desk.
And that's the computer.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I always thought this was
But
your computer.
that air purifier is actually connected through HomeKit to
oh my
the
God.
network. So
because
I can
they make
control
them
it from
like
my
this.
phone.
They look like this, the new Apple computers though.
Don't
like
the Mac
semi-small?
Pros do.
Yeah,
That's
that's
not
what
a
I'm
Mac
saying.
Pro. It's
Okay,
that's
so
it's an air
that,
purifier.
all right, so that was my mistake. But that looks exactly like the computer that is going. Like I saw, it was like maybe like a week or two ago. They just had that Apple event, and their like new computers look like relatively similar to that.
No, the new computers are all laptops. So
Not the Mac Pro.
well, they don't. Well, the Mac Pro isn't new, so but that's what it looks like. I mean, it's smaller
Relatively,
than that,
right,
but yeah.
Anyhow, all right. So I guess I'll give an introduction about myself. Following up that, I don't know. I guess you could say impressive resume. I'm just a 22-year-old college student. My name is David. Me and Joe, like, really got close over the past few years because I had a clothing business with my buddy Alan, and this started back in freshman year of high school. And then ever since then, we kind of grew it up until 2 years ago or a year and a half ago.
Yeah, just before COVID, actually. So we literally, our timing was terrible, right?
Yeah.
We kind of said, let's get together on this and sort of relaunch the whole thing and invested in a website and all kinds of cool stuff.
Right
and,
at the worst time.
It was literally like March of the same period when COVID sort of kicked in. So our timing kind of sucked on that front. But
I mean, like, to be fair, I think it was like a blessing and a curse at the same time because a lot more people were home. And the first wave of close, and this is kind of going off topic of the introduction, but our first wave of close happened, like you said, months or maybe like weeks after the first like whole outbreak happened. And we were like, all right, how are people going to buy this? How are people going to like this idea of, people like putting out clothes when they don't know what the next step is, and we kind of just like went on a limb and like, we're like, just have been really close ever since then. But back to the storyline, we met, me and Joe linked up about 2 years ago, getting close with the clothing stuff. And what else? I don't know what else to say. I mean, I've had a couple jobs. I worked at Weiss Markets. I don't know if that's important. Internships my senior year of high school at Dutchland. I was a graphics design guy, and then now I'm a marketing major with a dual diploma, I guess, in management. So I don't know. We just kind of
sounds impressive.
Yeah, I mean, trying to. I mean, I don't know. We're trying to just, like I said, like from the beginning, just have this podcast as like kind of like a middle ground for like seeing two different perspectives on things. How does Joe see X and how do I see Y? Like, it's just going to be something interesting that we kind of relate on. And we had a couple topics. I don't know if you wanted to break the ice with what we had for like the first thing. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think, obviously this is tied very closely to the Exclusive Minds, right? We even talked about naming the podcast Exclusive Minds. And Exclusive Minds, for those who don't know, is the brand of clothing that David referenced, and you can pretty much find the history and what's available at exmnds.com, exclusiveminds.com, or actually, I guess, exclusiveminds.us. We don't own the .com version, unfortunately. There's
the
a
guy
land
that has it.
squatter who just is sitting on it and wants, excessive amounts of money. I guess that's the world we live in these days. So if you're thinking about, getting into business, Dave and I talked about this. Don't come up with the name first unless you know that you can actually secure the domain names. So that's lesson number one for those of you out there that are thinking about starting a new business, right? So we don't own exclusiveminds.com, but we do own .us and abbreviation exmnds.com.
So if you had a lifelong passion about a certain name of things, just completely throw that out the window unless there's a .com version of that. Because at the end, that's all that really matters. Like I saw a thing too with Elon Musk. He did with Tesla. He had like the guy, like he had like a salesperson go to his like front door that owned the Tesla IP or whatever. And he was like just throwing out offers to him. And I think they ended up selling it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if this is true, but for like $75,000. Tesla Motors, the IP for it.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And now think about it. This guy's worth $300 billion. So it's like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because, the guy who owns exclusiveminds.com is basically just all he does is basically buy and sell domain names. That's his job. And he actually, I think it was Malaysia or Philippines or something. And so I went back and forth with him trying to buy it. But, obviously this is a total startup. So I'm like, dude, we're not going to drop, 10 grand or whatever it is for a freaking domain name. So, again, that's lesson number one, right? When you are, especially in an industry like clothing or fashion, where really it's all about brand identity, right? It's probably more about brand identity than it is about the product itself a lot of times. And we'll talk about that, I think, right?
Yeah.
So you got to focus on the brand side of it as well as just the product side of it. And we, missed out on the domain, but who knows? Maybe someday we'll get it.
Exactly. So I guess this parlays into the next question. Like you said, you had a background in like business and sales and all that type of stuff. And now kind of going more into like the fashion and streetwear end of things. How did you kind of view that growing up? Were you someone that was into fashion like when you were younger, or is that something that you acquired more of a taste of over the past couple of years?
So I guess my my fashion tastes have ebbed and flowed over the course of my life. I don't, growing up, I don't think it was really a big thing. Like everybody, I kind of grew up in the very early Jordan years. So I remember chasing Air Jordans when they first came out. Unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough to save them. I'm not even sure if I actually got a pair because they were impossible to get.
Back then they were.
Yeah, it was the hot thing, right? So, but then when I kind of got into my working career and started making some money, I actually got into a pretty lengthy stretch where I was all about, dressing up to the nines, basically in suits. And back then, you wore suits and you wore ties to work. So I got into a hook of Hugo Boss.
Hugo.
And so I spent really obscene amounts of money on suits and Hugo Boss gear for, I don't know, a stretch of period of time. And then, the world kind of changed. And quite frankly, I guess my stuff is softened to more casual and bounce through things. And we talked before we jumped on this podcast. Right now, I've been chasing Easy shoes and I wear sweatshirts. But, let's face facts, right? The world we live in is different. I just spent I'm a guy who traveled probably 3+ weeks of the month, all over the place, all over the U.S. primarily. But, so now I've been home for 20 months and I've been living in sweatpants and hoodies, Exclusive Mind hoodies for those that want to know. But so it's all over the place. I have an appreciation for it. At one point I'd have no problem spending, $150 on a tie. Now, if you ask me, I would think you're completely effing crazy if you spend $150 on a tie or a t-shirt, but to each his own.
There's definitely been a shift in business attire just from a student's perspective. You could just tell, like, I feel like a lot more people are just more relaxed. Like even on Zoom meetings, like, when COVID first happened, you would go on Zoom, you would see people trying to like get dressed up before hopping on a Zoom call or whatever. And then now, you get on a Zoom call and the teacher's like you said, wearing hoodies or whatever it is. At least my professors are, at least like after hours. Like no one's doing how the traditional way of doing things. Like it's funny because we were before the podcast we were talking about the shoes. Going back to that, I remember when Joe did not like the Yeezy. He was just making fun of it because it was like a new thing, and now this guy has all these pairs of shoes. I'm like, dude, like a lot of these shoes that he has are really cool. Like me and my buddy Cam, we've been chasing after these foam runners for like months. Like they're like kind of like an how would you describe it? Like a
they're like Crocs.
Like a Croc. Yeah, like a one off of a
Crocs.
Croc.
Yeah.
And we've been chasing after for months. And I remember Joe mentioned it to me. He's like, yeah, I got a pair back when. And I never seen them. And then today I'm like, hey, can I see them? I look at them and they're like, I'm like sitting there like envious. I'm like, oh my God, I want this shoe. But it's just crazy how like we kind of have these different views on like an item. Like this is just a shoe, but like anyone else just is like, all right, well, yeah, it's just a casual shoe. Like Joe, I mean, he might like the value of like being like a limited item, or he might just like the shoe itself. But to me, it's just like, holy shit, like this is something that not a lot of people have.
Well, so
it's
that's
like a collector item.
Yeah. So I mean, a couple things there, right? So I started buying them only because I was hanging out with you, and I realized that if you were lucky enough to sort of win the lottery on getting the shoes, you could turn around and sell them for twice the price. So I literally, like the first couple pairs, I literally just did it because I was figuring I'd just flip them, right?
Okay, so it's like more of like a business.
And then I got them, and I was like, oh, you know what? These shoes are kind of cool.
Yeah.
What the hell? I think I'll just keep them, right? Because I think, I kind of missed the big window, right? So, I mean, now if you get the Yeezys, I think you can flip them and make like $50, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I might as well just keep the damn things. And then it's kind of spiraled out of control. So I have like, I don't know, 6 or 7 pairs of the damn things.
The prime era for shoes and hype wear, I would say, and anyone that's listening could vouch to this, would be probably like that 2017, even 2018 era. That's like when Off-White, Bape, Yeezy, like this is when all these brands, like you could buy a $400 jacket and then turn around and sell it for like $600. Now Bape's making so many of the jackets that anyone could get them for like the retail price, which I think is like $500. But like there was like a huge like thing with it, right? Like the Yeezys back, how you were the point you were trying to get at is you could buy a pair of the V1 Yeezys, the Oxford Tans or whatever they were, for like the retail price on them, what, $210 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
So you could buy them for $210 and flip them for $1,000.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it was like a
different world,
like a 5 times markup. And the point that he was trying to get at is now you could still do the same thing, but there's just so many like loopholes, bots, even reps that people are buying. It's like the market's still there. It's just you're not getting $1,000 now. You're getting closer to $300 or whatever.
I think the only reason I even was successful with those foam runners is because the way Adidas works, and it's everybody, right? They have a loyalty program. So I just happened to kind of bang out like 2 or 3 wins and went from like no status to the top status. And I guess they supposedly say that you have a better chance of winning. So I was at the highest level within Adidas's program because that's when I won those. And since then, I've kind of faded, and now I haven't won jack shit in like the last 6 months, it seems like. So it kind of comes and goes. But, I mean, it's really, it's actually been kind of an interesting learning experience, working with you on the Exclusive Minds clothes, kind of looking at what Yeezy does. Because, being kind of behind the scenes and having some knowledge of manufacturing on clothes and how that works, the reality is, like, it's Adidas, for Christ's sake, right? So that if they could take 1 million orders, which they probably could, they could manufacture 1 million foam runners or cloud runners, whatever the hell they're called, right?
Yeah.
And they don't, right? They artificially keep the numbers low to kind of bump the exclusivity and build the hype, right? Because, come on, every time this guy releases shoes, they sell out, and I'm like, seconds. It's a crock of crap.
And they don't it's like that's the beauty of the marketing. It's all building hype.
And I shouldn't probably give him credit because if you ask me, that's an Apple thing. Apple, I think, has taught all of the world that, because if you look at it, right, iPhones, Apple Watches, right, they launch it, they announce it, they go, we're going to open up orders on the Friday after we do our speech. And the next thing you know, there's like a 2-month backlog, and they quickly fill it, right? But they artificially, on that first wave, keep it low. And you can sit there and say, well, they're doing that for supply chain and they don't want to get burned with excess inventory. But It's a load of crap. I
Well,
mean,
if one of your friends has it, like out of a group of 10 people, and that one person has this phone and they're showing it off, look at this, look at this, like, and then that next person's like, huh, like maybe the next go around, I'll buy that phone. But I think Apple sets the standard for a lot of things, right? So let's compare the two brands. We got Apple and Yeezy. When you're buying the Apple phone, you're buying into the product, the name, whatever. But when you take the phone out of the box, it's like a whole like experience, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like it like kind of like, I don't know if it like releases dopamines, but you're like, holy crap, I'm opening up this box of like a phone that I just bought that not a lot of people have.
And the boxes on these Yeezys is the same way, right?
That's what I was just getting at, yeah.
You know, I mean, the typical shoe box, right? It's a top that just pops off and whip-de-doo, right?
Yeah.
These have these
sliders
and it's like a recycled material and the fonts, and it's a whole thing. I mean, and it's kind of a learning experience buying into that, because again, it's giving us some exposure and experience on what we could do better on the exclusive mind side of it. You know, we focused a lot on the graphics and stuff, but yeah, the packaging is a big thing, and we actually, you know, did hang tags and some other stuff to kind of give it, you know, a little bit of a different vibe. So it's been kind of interesting, and it's you know, you have to look at your peers in the industries. I don't know if Yeezy we consider as a peer, but you got to look at those kinds of things. A second cousin. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, it's all about developing and building the brand, and so all of that look and feel and touch and tactile stuff is part of the brand, right?
It's one of those things where you have to look at every single detail to kind of understand the bigger picture. And that's like kind of another thing we talked behind the scenes is like we've always had our designs, which are kind of like more out there, like doing things different. And more recently, we're kind of taking a step back and thinking, all right, well, what if we do it a little bit more simpler, but we focus more on the material, or we focus more on the product at hand or the packaging? And like we're kind of like, it's like kind of like a balance between the like checks and balances between like, all right, well, what's gonna work, what's not gonna work, and kind of meeting in the middle of like, let's do simple but not too simple, and let's do kind of intricate, technical but not too.
I know
technical.
it's really kind of weird because I mean it kind of goes back to branding, right? And you know, if you look at the clothing companies that are huge successes, right? The Ralph Lauren's and those types of things, you know, they all are built around basically a very simple logo, right? I mean, it's the horse, and
on the top right.
That's pretty much it, right? I mean, our designs have been heavily on the graphics, and we do, I think, have at this point we kind of have some. We obviously have the exclusive minds text, right? But we also have the butterfly, like which you could scale back, and that could actually become the brand. I mean, it's sort of chasing a very crowded business that's already done. So you always have to try and do something different. But yeah, I mean, it's challenging, right? What's the right answer? Is it over the top graphics? Is it just a simple, you know, butterfly or some exclusive minds text that's embroidered onto the arms or the back? I think we've done right. So we're trying to find the balance, and so far I don't know if one has kind of set itself apart from the other, but we're going to keep at it and kind of figure it out. And if we had an email, well, we do have an email, right? Teams at our team, is it team or teams? I can never remember.
It's team, I think.
team singular, right? So TEAM at EXMNDS.com. You can always shoot us an email there, and we'll get it if you have any feedback on the podcast.
True. That's what I was going to say, because there is no comment section. Like, how are we going to figure it out? I guess, I don't know. I guess some sort of social media, just reach out.
So here we are. We're starting a podcast, and it's pretty clear that we're kind of leaning on Exclusive Minds, and we don't own exclusiveminds.com.
So yeah,
that sucks. But
I mean, to think about it though, like everything kind of ties in together. Like the podcast is going to tie into the brand, and it's one of those things where we're kind of
not intentionally, and I don't think that's really what we have in mind, right? I mean, we're obviously going to. I mean, it's going to be a promotional media for us, so you could say that they're our first sponsor, right?
And when you're like starting a brand, you are the brand at the end of the day. So like no matter whatever you do, you kind of.
But we're not doing this to solely talk about.
No, not at all.
It's just interweaving it in because it's kind of the current.
But I'm just saying, like if this blows up, that's also going to cross leverage our other business. That's kind of more the point that I was trying to get at with that. But
which is a whole other thing, right? Is how to. Like social media, right? We talk about social media all the time and how do you leverage it, right? I mean, we've obviously got social media tie-ins, and you know, I think we'll get the cars and our passions for that pretty soon. You know, and I I have a Hummer EV on order, right? The first edition, right? And I said the only way I could really buy it is if I could figure out some way to monetize it, right? So my immediate thing was let me create a YouTube channel, right? I see all these guys online that are doing these auto YouTube channels, and I'm very envious. And I'm like, well, how the hell do I get into that? And of course, you start to look at it, and it's like, man, it is really, really hard to
it's a dime
monetize that. I mean, it's a dime a dozen, but even just, you can't. I don't want to say you luck into it because I don't know if that's really true, but
luck beats skill.
I guess the barrier for YouTube is like you have to have like 10,000.
Oh, you're talking about for the monetization.
Yeah, I mean, even just to get started, right? I mean, even if you find something that's kind of successful, it could take a while. You could be successful, and it could take you 6 months to a year or longer just to even get over the threshold to monetize it. So,
I mean, YouTube's always like changing and evolving their business no matter what. Like way back when I was like making videos and stuff like that, I think the limit for then was like 1,000 subscribers. Like that was like the entry point.
Right.
Now it's like 10,000. So,
and it makes you wonder. like how many startups. I mean, how much of their content, what percentage of their content is actually driven by the big, YouTubers and influencers versus how much of that content is actually, small people like us who are just getting started or just throw up a video for the sake of throwing up a video. It's a one-off. And like, I wonder what I'm sure I'll never find out, but I'm wondering what the percentage is that's really driven by those who are doing it. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's like it's an interesting thing for sure. Like I feel like YouTube's always been like the entry point for a lot of businesses. It's because like it's one of those things where if you hit on YouTube, you kind of hit on a lot of platforms. That's like the platform that everyone goes back to. Like even if these startup guys who are on TikTok, they always kind of go back to YouTube. So if you could hit on YouTube with the Hummer stuff and you could leverage off of there, you could leverage on anything. I mean, that's like the most loyal fan base. Besides, I would only say the other competition for that would be like podcasting or Twitch, because they're long forms of content where people build a sense of brand loyalty. All right, I want to understand who Joe is and his business and then kind of follow along on his journey.
Yeah.
So it is very interesting, and it's one of those questions is like, how do you get into that market? What makes you different from the other guys?
Yeah, and that's actually, so I mean, we're doing this podcast, but we're not videoing this, right? So
we'll work on it.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, but should you, right? I mean, if you look at like, I guess Rogan and all these big podcasters, right? They do both, right? They actually do the podcast and they also are videoing it and putting it up on YouTube as well, right? Because I guess this is an audio only recording, and so it's only going to be a podcast, at least this episode, right? So that's something else I guess we got to figure out. It's kind of interesting though. I mean, social media, it for me, I guess it's just nice to kind of experience all the inner workings, right? I think on most of us, the majority of us, right, we're just interacting with it on the surface as a consumer, right? We're just consuming the content, but creating that content is actually kind of interesting. And it is pretty easy just to take your phone and record yourself, fixing your auto or your car or whatever it might be, or doing something stupid, and putting it up, right? But actually doing something with that and, branding around it or monetizing it and actually doing it for a living is a whole different story.
Oh yeah, and that's something that's like a ginormous mountain. Like once you get to the top, it's very rewarding, obviously, but it's always that climb up.
Oh yeah.
It's like, how the hell am I supposed to turn this into like a profitable business to support X, Y, and Z?
So, I mean, we talked about the Hummer, right? So,
back to that.
I'm like, in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm watching these videos of all these car guys, right? And I'm like, this crap's easy, right? You just, sure, you just buy a Lamborghini or a Ferrari and
just post it on YouTube. Instant million subscribers.
But then I'm like, there's a million of these guys doing this, right? I just watched the video the other day. Is some kids, I guess they're taking their dad's car. It's a Ferrari P1, right? Or a Ferrari LaFerrari, right? So he's talking about a $2 million car.
They're expensive.
And they're, the joke is they're driving it through the drive-through at Jamba Juice, and I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Oh, that's literally a song from Travis Scott.
Oh, is that what it is? All right. So you can see that I'm the old guy, right? I don't have the references to modern pop culture. But anyway, so yeah, I'm like, are you kidding me with this, right? I mean, that's the video, right? And I'm like, but there's a million of those, right? It's not just one dude. It was Tanner Frost or Tanner or something. Tanner
Tanner
Fox.
Fox.
Yeah. That's a dude, right? Good, it's a cool podcast, but
Yeah.
I'm like, oh God. So I'm like thinking to myself, well, okay, what the hell am I going to do? I'm thinking, all right, so I want to do this. I want to get into doing a video podcast, the Hummer EV when I get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It'll be cool. I don't know. I really have no idea what I would do, right? So I'm watching all these videos and I'm like, holy Christ, there is a very crowded space, right? So, setting yourself apart, is it the actual cars or is it,
I think it's the mix of the personality and the cars. It's like kind of coming up with these abstract ideas to like kind of put you away from that. Like obviously not everyone has access to a LaFerrari to go to Jamba Juice. So that's like the separating factor. But when are they supposed to send out the car? Are you still going through with that? What's the plan?
So I mean, I guess it's over a year now, right? October of last year, they did an online reservation thing where you basically just, if you were lucky enough to get into the queue, you put down $100 and supposedly when they ship them, start shipping them, you have a reservation for one of the first, whatever it is. Nobody knows. 10,000 units, 500 units, who knows, right? So yeah, I'm basically twiddling my thumbs hoping. And I think originally everybody kind of thought, well, it's like buying, easy shoes. Like if you win the lottery, you're one of the first, 500 people who get them. Cars don't work that way. They build them over the course of a year.
Very interesting concept. Like I never heard. I mean, the only
it's new, right? I mean, it's GMC and Chevy, and that's not how they do it. Right? Normally, you go down to the dealership and you gotta, hopefully buy it. And I guess with this, they were doing this kind of special launch, trying to follow sort of a Tesla model. I guess where they're doing online sales through a dealership. It's
because they did that with the Roadster.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird. But so I think originally everybody was kind of like thinking, all right. I secured one of the limited numbers and I'll get it, before the end of this year. But now I guess the word on the street is what they're doing is they're going to actually build units and give them to dealerships first. So the dealerships have them and show, again, they're trying to build hype. And then I also hear they're going to obviously ship to VIPs, right? And how many VIPs are there? I'm guessing anybody who's got a, podcast? I have a podcast, right?
Yeah, we do got one. Now we do. Officially, so you're higher on the list, I think.
No, so I mean, it'll obviously be influencers and LeBron James and bullshit like that. So my guess is, I'll have an opportunity to buy one of the units, but who knows, right? It could be. I mean, it could be in December of this year. It could be July of next year after 600 other people have already gotten them and the hype is already over. That's
kind of what you were talking to me about. It's kind of like the same model as the Yeezy shoes. You kind of had like a little plan to maybe to like turn that around and maybe get a profit for the Hummer, you were saying, right?
So again, I was looking at ways, how do I monetize this, right? How do I buy this vehicle and instead of just driving it and spending every penny of my dollar on it, just driving it, how do I monetize it, right? So I was like, okay, I'll just, I'll do a bunch of videos and stuff and try and monetize it, which, I could potentially do. But here's the other problem, right? And we just talked about this. So you buy the car, right? Day one, and it costs you $112,000, right? And for the record, I can't afford it. But right. So you buy the car, it's $112,000, and you start doing all these videos, you start posting them, you start actually getting hits, and you start getting likes. The reality is, even if you have some modicum of success, I mean, I'm not talking like, hundreds of thousands of viewers, but if you start to get even some level of success, again, it takes you 3, 4, 6 months to get over that threshold. Yeah. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing, right? You have to spend to get to the point where you might be able to make money, and
it's like a whole gamble.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I don't know. It's gonna be kind of interesting to see what happens.
So now this is going to be kind of going off the topic of the Hummer. What's your ultimate dream car? If I said you have unlimited amount of money without saying a
Ferrari 250. It's the most expensive car on the planet.
Is it really? How much?
I think that the one just sold in private hands for $70 million. So it's like a 1960s Ferrari. Okay. Yeah.
So would you get it just for the pure fact that not a lot of people have it, or do you like the car growing up?
I love the car. It's the coolest. It's just like the coolest looking car.
Okay.
But okay, that's a whole right. I mean, it's not likely to ever happen, but who knows?
70 million. Jeez, I couldn't
That's
even
I
justify
mean,
spending
I
it.
think a couple auctions in the 40s. There's only like 24 of them, right? It's
Okay,
super
I see what
ultra.
you're trying to say.
Yeah. But I mean, like if you were just talking mainstream car, like I had the money, what would I buy?
Yeah.
Oh God. I don't know. I mean, I am one of those guys who just loves cars. So, I mean, if it was a McLaren P1 or a McLaren Senna or, a Ferrari, whatever, I would just be happy as a pig in slop to keep it PC.
I think I already kind of broke that earlier.
Did I? Probably.
I think I did.
I'm going to
know.
try and throttle
But
back on that.
For the record, Joe has a literal Bugatti in his driveway right now.
Oh yeah. So I have the Lego.
No, it's a real Bugatti, and he also has a Ferrari stacked on top of it.
And I have a Ferrari F40, which is also one of the coolest cars ever made. Right.
Yeah.
So, realistically, that's probably $1 million to $2 million car.
Yeah.
That would probably be my ultimate realistic car if we ever start banging some money out of this.
Do it.
Is a Ferrari F40. That would be the car. But yes, I do own a Bugatti and I do own a Ferrari F40.
Real life.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I just went to the McLaren dealership. They had a car show last weekend. I saw the
that Cars and Coffee. It was a Cars and Coffee kind of thing.
It was hosted by the McLaren dealership themselves, but yeah, it's essentially like a Cars and
Coffee.
So
they had an F1 there, right? So
it was the F1. They had the Senna. They had a bunch of cars. I couldn't even tell you the names of them. I know they had like a bunch of 720s. I saw an R8 there. And I saw this car. I think I never seen these cars before. They're called the Lotus. Have you ever heard of a Lotus?
Yeah, Lotus. Yeah.
I never heard of them, but they're very, very small. They're like almost look like toy cars. I've never seen them before. Very cool cars. I mean, I like cars. I wouldn't consider myself a car guy. I don't obviously know like every single part of the car and stuff like that, but I could appreciate it. And I was gonna tell Joe to come, but then this guy was in like Houston or something. I don't know.
I was traveling for work.
But yeah, like I said, I really do have an appreciation for cars. And if I could ever get like a dream car, quote unquote, just for the boss factor, I think I'd have to get like the Rolls Royce. It's always like a classic car. Like I always see these, and I've liked the truck actually a lot more. Like at first I didn't like them as much.
Oh, the Coolion or
the Coolion. But then as of late, I kind of started developing you have to like appreciate it for what it is. Like, I don't know, it's just like a bigger style, or the Ghost, but I like the black with the orange interior, or like a blue interior. I feel like that would be on brand and super cool.
And then you got to get that. What's the freaking twinkly lights on the roof?
Oh, of course. That's I think
that's
the
Starlight.
And they have the umbrella that comes out the door.
Yeah, of course. It's
it all
probably
comes
a
down to
$14,000 umbrella.
It comes down to
silver
branding
tipped or some
Everything
shit.
Comes down to
it's
branding.
awesome. That's it.
Like every single detail. So I mean, that's what I would get. I mean, I really like the car. I mean, besides that, I've been really liking the Trackhawks lately. That's been like kind of my go-to car at the moment. It's like the Jeep.
Kind of a stealth undercover.
Oh my god,
power.
Sleeper car for sure. Yeah. You were just like driving around. For people that don't know, it's like it's the body of the what is that? The Jeep.
Grand Cherokee.
Yeah. And they have like a Hellcat engine. Literally, you would never expect it to be like one of the fastest cars.
It's not a bad way to spend $100,000. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the EV. It's like one of those things. Like,
I know, it's crazy.
If you could get one, then there's a huge market for them. I mean, and lately there's been a huge car shortage. Have you considered? Because I talked to a buddy of mine earlier today. He was considering selling his car because there's like such a huge market for it.
It's nuts, right? So my wife drives a Jeep Wrangler, right? It's actually a 2018 Moab edition,
very
right?
Nice, very nice.
It's just a Jeep. I want to say we paid. So in 2018, because I bought it.
The IRS is listening, by the way.
I think I paid like. It was a $56,000 Jeep that I paid like 51-ish for it.
Okay.
Right, because you could get discounts back then. So out the door, it was like $52,000, and so we took it to the dealer just to mess around because I was considering getting the new electric. There's a Jeep that's it's a hybrid, right?
Just like every other car on the market.
It's not a full blown one, but you can plug it in and you get like 30 miles or 25 miles of electric. So we were thinking about trading it in for that, and so we go and they're like, yeah, we'll give you like I got an offer of like, I don't know, it was like $48,000 or $49,000 trade-in. Yeah, but the problem is, right? So on the other ends, there's absolutely no discounting on cars today, right? So before where you could get, $6,000, $7,000 off on a Jeep,
That's not around no more.
you're paying list price. So it's kind of a shell game, right? So yeah, you can definitely sell cars for crazy amounts, but if you need to replace it, you're going to pay a crazy amount.
And when did you say you got the car?
2018, I guess.
So for people that don't really understand that, he's saying he bought the car for let's call it 52, and they offered you 49.
Yeah, something like that.
So in 2 years, there
was hardly any depreciation.
You lost only $2,000, which is absolutely crazy. You couldn't even
But
back a couple of years ago, so if someone said that today, they look at you sideways.
But like I said, it's a shell game, right? So I mean, but I'm going to overpay for a car today compared to what I could have paid 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's just moving the numbers around. I mean, it kind of sucks because it's great for the dealerships, but it probably sucks for the consumers because everybody's paying list price now. So you're paying a premium for cars across the board. So yeah. I mean, I considered it, but yeah, it's kind of nuts. Not a good time to, I think, buy a car.
Yeah, as someone that knew you too, you've had a couple of the hybrid cars. You like those, or is that just something?
I'm an auto. I mean, in my economic bracket, I guess I'm sort of a car junkie, and so I currently am driving a Chevy Bolt with a Bolt, which is a full electric car. Some people are probably laughing if you're in the know on autos, right? Because it's been recalled because it could potentially burn to the ground.
Actually,
you got to park it outside and all this other crap. They're replacing every battery in every one they ever made over the last 4 years. Not yet, but So I mean, it's an electric car. It is actually probably one of the coolest and fun cars. And I'm not a generation. What the hell? So what am I? I'm a baby boomer, I guess officially. I don't even know what the hell Generation Z and Generation X where the lines are. I don't know. But obviously, I actually grew up playing video games from day one, so I'm kind of a video game even today. That's a whole nother thing. I guess we can get into at a point. But the thing is, I actually love technology. Obviously, working in technology, I love it. So I think I was attracted to electric cars very early on because they are heavy on the electric, and it's almost like playing a video game, trying to maximize your mileage by coasting and recharging the battery, and there's graphics that show it. So it literally is like playing a video game, driving an electric
real
car.
life Forza kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
That's
right?
awesome. Yeah, how do you feel about Tesla's model of cars? Do you like those ones?
I do. I mean, I probably would have bought one, except they're obviously too expensive, right? I mean, I bought the Bolt when I don't think that 3 was out yet. So you were looking at an S or an X, right? So, brand new, you were still $90,000, $100,000. Even used, they were like 50 or 60 grand for heavily used ones at the time when I bought the Bolt. So I thought about it, but I mean, now there's so many options on electrical. It's crazy. Audi, everybody's got a full electric.
I mean, not to go too off the rails, but can we talk about the Tesla stock prices the past couple weeks? Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I
missed out. I'm
kicking myself. I'm still I know this happened a year ago. They got up to a good amount of number. It was probably around what they're at now. And they ended up doing a 5-to-1 split.
Yep.
And they're now getting back to that number. And I'm like, I should have put more money into it, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's not going to happen again. And then it ends up happening again. And I'm like, God damn it! How much of this can I deal with? It's not good for the mental health. I'm kicking myself.
I missed the Tesla window. I didn't miss the Nvidia. So I
let's talk about that. Let's get down.
I bought some shares of Nvidia. I don't know. Before COVID, right? So Nvidia has gone freaking Pluto, right? And is still going to Pluto. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm like, man, I should just probably sell this and reinvest it in something else. And every time I think about it, I'm like, why the hell would you get off the rocket ship when it's going to the moon, right? It's the same thing with Apple, right? I mean, unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately. I mean, probably anybody who's got a 401k, or even if you don't think you're in the stock market, you're wrapped around the axle of Apple. And so it's probably good for all of us that Apple just keeps going to Pluto as well.
What?
Actually, Pluto's not an official planet anymore. So I guess
I think we got what you said.
you have to go to Uranus. Oops, did I just?
Right. Now we're gonna end the podcast. I'll talk to you guys.
That's where we have to insert one of these sound effects on that one. The rim shot, ding, on that one. That was a poor joke. So.
When you worked at Apple, did they offer like a stock option back then?
They did. Oh yeah, really? They did. And so I mean, for those that, for official record, I wasn't smart enough to keep the stock. I had it was funny at the time, right? The Apple stock was pennies on the dollar of what it is now. And it was one of those things where, it wasn't hyper inflating every year like it did. So when I had it, I had a boss who worked there who basically his advice to me was basically just get it and sell it every time, So I hold on to it and made some pretty good money, but I did sell all the stock. And if I didn't, I would probably not be on this podcast, and I'd be driving that Ferrari. But
I would be in the Bahamas.
Unfortunately, I didn't have a time machine, and I, benefit of hindsight, right? So I can kick myself in the ass about that one all day long because it's brutal.
Let's shift this to your favorite topic, Bitcoin and NFTs.
Ugh. So this is the craziest thing, right? So I work, so my day job, right, is basically selling some technology that goes into data centers. And a couple of our really big recent customers are Bitcoin farming companies.
No way, actually.
Including one that just went public, right? So
Holy
I
shit.
sell a crap ton of product into Bitcoin farms. And I mean, these are, legit, serious, tens of millions of dollar, ventures and stuff like that. It's not, me and you running it in the basement. It is,
like some serious accounts.
Serious accounts. And so obviously selling product into it, I try to, you want to learn your customers, what their business is. So you can have an educated conversation and kind of understand their pains and what they're going through. All right. So being a technology guy, even early on with Bitcoin, I'm a technology guy and I get it, right? So I'm like, and I don't get Bitcoin. I just don't.
And that's the problem I think a lot of people have that are like missing out on the whole wave. It's just like what is it? Like what makes it go up? What makes it go down? And that's kind of like the beauty behind it is just because it's like a decentralized market.
I get that.
Yeah,
I get the but it's. I don't know. I just I have a hard time because there's nothing behind it, right? It's not real. I mean, I know people are going to argue with me, and if we had a broader audience, this would probably blow up the internet, right? But I don't know. I don't even like I'm not educated enough, I think, to sit there and spout my mouth off. I just don't get it because it's with stock, right? You're buying shares in Tesla, right? You may own a billionth of it, but you own a billionth of it, right? You own Tesla,
it goes up,
right?
It goes down, yeah.
There's tangible behind the scenes. So stocks I get,
but the crypto you can't get
but
behind.
yeah, you got a computer that's churning and GPUs that are processing information, and every whatever it is, hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 days, 3 weeks, it spits out a coin, right?
Yeah, I mean,
and then you share that
early.
with a bunch of other people who are doing the farming at the same time,
Yeah.
and okay, so you just spit out a coin that's worth $61,000, but where the hell that 61,000? It's only worth 61,000 if you pay for it, right, or you buy it.
And yeah, I mean the whole thing is just like a demand for it. And I bought some not a substantial amount, but I bought a couple like $100, $200, $300 worth back in like 2017. It was like 8,000. People were thinking that was high because like when you see like an $8,000 coin, you're like, okay, this is some serious stuff. Back in 2017, 2018, I believe it hits like an all-time high of like 20 something thousand or 17 in the teens or whatever it was. And then people were like, okay, it has a bubble. It's going to pop. It pops.
It did,
goes
but then
down,
it went right back up.
And then fast forward now to back to 2020 and then now 2021 and going to 2022. We're sitting at it was at like 60 something thousand dollars the other day. So it's like, even like, how do you even know it's going to go to like 100,000, 200,000, 300,000?
No, you don't. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like Tesla could crash overnight. It's not likely, but I mean, yeah,
There's more structure behind Tesla, is what you're trying to say.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, cryptocurrency. I mean, you saw it, right? I mean, China basically said you can't. We're shutting down Bitcoin, both on the mining side of it, right? That's one of the reasons why it kind of took a hit because, and I think that's also the reason why we're seeing such an influx in the U.S. because you can't mine it in China anymore.
Yeah.
Because of the using electricity and all this other stuff. But I mean, the Chinese government says, hey, no more Bitcoin in China at all, right? And I guess in theory, the U.S. could do that too at some point too. The Treasury could just say, hey, screw you, no Bitcoin transactions.
Well, a lot of these
or we're going to come out with our own digital.
A lot of these big banks have a lot of money into it, though.
I know. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think that hasn't happened,
That's
right?
what I'm saying,
All these financials have now invested in it, and that's the reason why I think it's starting to go back up, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I think I was listening to like one of the Dave Portnoy podcasts because he kind of screws around.
He always
and
cracks me up. That guy.
it's the same thing. I mean, I think he sat there and said, "I don't get this, right?" But I'm playing around with it, but I don't understand it, right? I'm the same way. I'm like, I don't understand it, and I sure as hell I'm not gonna.
And they got the altcoins, or they got the
Doge,
counterparts.
Ethereum.
Doge
I know there's some
joke,
million.
but
of
they
them.
have like Ethereum, which is the counterparts of Bitcoin, which has now been popular with the NFT space. And for the people that don't know what an NFT is, it's like a non-fungible token. Like
that's
an
a whole other
artwork.
freaking thing. Jesus. I mean,
And when you look on these websites like OpenSea or whatever, you go to the portfolio, and they have these things called CryptoPunks, which is essentially a different line of an NFT that people made back in 2017. They're starting to get popular again. And this guy took out a $500 million loan and bought his own CryptoPunk with it. I think that's what it ended up being. And on the OpenSea thing, this guy has sold it for I'll have to pull it up, but it was a $500 million purchase that this guy just bought from himself and sold it to himself and bought from himself to drive up the price of his.
yeah,
NFT.
that's an indie. Or that was that the picture of
It's
like.
white hair. The white hair, like kind of like crypto looking thing.
I don't know.
I'll
So I
just
mean,
show
I
it to you.
didn't someone spend like an absorbent amount of money for a digital picture?
Everyone does. They're selling, bro. They sell for like the floor. I think is like 300,000 or 400,000.
So I mean, that's
That's
crazy.
like the bottom.
This is that generational gap thing, right? This is where that kind of comes out. Like I guess and I really honestly think that I'm pretty technically savvy, but this whole NFT and crypto coins thing is just beyond me. It's crazy.
Literally crazy, dude. And like. Is like, how do you know? It's another thing where like, how do you know what to buy and how do you know what not to buy? Like, obviously, the average Joe is not going to buy a CryptoPunk for $300,000. You know, not everyone has $300,000 laying around.
Nuts.
So it's like, how do you know which project's going to pop off and which one's not going to pop off?
So I don't know what we want to do here because we're actually on 52 minutes, right? We talked about trying to keep this under an hour.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, we could call it. I texted Joe in the middle of the podcast. I asked him, what day should we put this out? I mean, this is an open conversation. We gotta.
I don't even. Well, I mean, I'm guessing that we won't really edit this, so I have to. I guess we just have to figure out how you actually post a podcast.
I'm assuming this is going to be on everywhere, like Spotify and Apple.
I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to figure that out.
I mean,
try to limit these to like maybe like we could probably do like I think a reasonable amount is like once a week or. That's another thing we talked about, and that's another conversation.
Yeah, the cadence. I mean, obviously, we are not interviewing famous people, which helps ease the content. We're just rapping, right? So, yeah, I mean, once a week, I would think we could probably get started on it and see how far we can go with this.
Yeah, and I just looked up the CryptoPunk. Sorry for everyone. It sold for 124,457 Ethereum, and Ethereum is currently at $4,500. So
that's like $500 million, right?
$500 million. It's crazy stuff, man. All we need is a slice of the pie.
Well, you need money to make money. That's the other. So if I can leave you with a couple life lessons, is make sure you can secure the domain name for your business
and join a pyramid scheme.
And Ponzi. Don't do the Ponzi schemes.
We're not financial advisors.
Don't take financial advice from two dumbasses on the podcast, right? Yeah, do not do that. But
I always wanted to say that.
Yeah. So get in early on the next
Bitcoin.
best thing. So,
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, then let's shut this down. This is our very first podcast. Actually, I think it flowed pretty good.
No, it went really well. I really enjoyed it.
I thought this was going to be like, lots of stuttering and stammering and trying to figure out what the hell to talk about. And the reality is
We could flow.
It's
a good
easy,
flow.
right?
I mean, me and Joe know each other for a long time. So
yeah,
I mean,
that
like,
helps. I mean, but I just, content. Like I know we started a list, right? We were going to talk, I wanted to talk about coffee, but that's all. We'll do that.
coffee. We'll talk about that next
We'll
time.
talk about that next time. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Cool. All right. So
where
thanks
can people find
everybody. I don't know where you're going to be able to find us. Hopefully on iTunes or podcast, and we'll figure out how to get it on Spotify if we can do that without having to pay to do it.
Our Instagram is at EXMNDS, and our website is also that, but .com after it. So
and Facebook, Exclusive
and Twitter.
Minds, and Twitter. I think our name is at the top of the search.
Yeah, just type in Exclusive Minds on Google.
Even though we don't own the .com domain name. But anyway, that's cool. So I guess we'll close it out, and we'll be back in a week after whenever this launches with a new one. And if we'll keep at it and we'll improve on it. So thanks all.
See you.
Later.